The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're coming to you from the Warner Center in Woodland Hills, California. This is the new home for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's also the new home for Autism Live. I have to stop saying it's new because it's relatively new. We've been here for a year now. I think that this week might mark exactly a year when we have been in the studio. So it's still, I guess the honeymoon is over. Right? But we like to think that the honeymoon continues. We're going to be with you live for the next 2 hours talking about a wide variety of topics having to do with autism. And I'm really excited to be here with you guys. And I have to stop for a second and say thank you to everybody for hanging in with us. We've had a lot of technical difficulties. We're still figuring them out. I guess because it's a year in at this new space, things are going wrong and there's heat and, who knows? We don't have it completely nailed down. We're taking care of things one thing at a time, and I really want to thank Matt, who has been patient and working the problem. What a way for somebody to come into a new job to inherit like a bunch of technical issues. It's all good, my friends. It's all good. We know as autism parents that stuff happens, right? The poo hits the fan on a regular basis, and we all learn and grow and go, all right, what do we have to do to get done what we have to get done? And then you just continue on, and that's what we're doing here. As I said, we are going to be with you live talking about autism from a 360-degree perspective. We hope that when you come here that you get something that you need. Now, I always like to remind you that this show is meant to be interactive, and this goes hand in hand with what you need, because I like to remind everybody that I am not a mind reader. I joke and say that I was a mind reader, but I had to give that up in order to be an autism mom. That's not the truth. I was never a mind reader. And it really helps me, and it helps everyone here on the show if we hear from you and we know what kinds of things help and support you. And I do know that sometimes you don't even know what you need, right? Which is why we feature all kinds of people here. We ask other parents to tell their stories. We ask teachers, we ask practitioners, and most especially we ask individuals from the autism spectrum to share their insight. So maybe in all of that, you'll hear something and go, oh, maybe that's the thing I need. But when you already know what you need, or let's say you're dreaming and thinking, okay, this is what I think I want, but I don't even know if that exists. That's when I get excited, because that's an opportunity to either let you know what does exist, or to maybe light a little inspiration in you so that you create the thing. Because I bow to all of your creativity. But again, we welcome parents, teachers, practitioners, family members, and individuals who are on the autism spectrum. We are a big community with one goal. I mean, we all have individual goals, right? Because this is not a one-size-fits-all, but our big cohesive goal that we have that brings us all together is that we all want to see the progress in the field of autism for the individuals that makes it substantive for them. Progress is what we're after. So write in and tell us how we can help you to get to that. We really look forward to that. So Matt's going to show you some of the different ways that you can participate here with us. And while he does that, I'm going to remind you that our homepage is autism-live.com. When you go there, all you have to do is click on the triangle on the computer screen, and it will start either the live show or the most recently recorded live show. If you are frustrated because we're in a shortened schedule for the summer and you're not getting enough Autism Live, my friends, there's so many ways to watch. We have done so many thousands of hours here. There's always 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can check us out on our YouTube page and some of the other places that Matt is showing you. But remember, on that homepage too, there's a memo tab in the upper left-hand corner. That will get you the 100 most recent episodes of Autism Live. Now, to the side of all that is something we call the live feature. It's a series of white boxes. If you'll put your cursor in the box that says your question, it doesn't have to be a question. It can be a comment. Sometimes you just like to shout into the dark and know that someone will read it. I will. I don't necessarily have to or can share it with everybody at home, but, write in. If you want to give us information about yourself, you can, but otherwise it's completely anonymous, and I love giving it, that's the default, right? The tough thing about that is that if you write in and you need information back from me, I don't have any way of finding who you are or where you are. We love it when you put in specific information and about what's happening and what it is that you need, and most especially we like some hint as to your location. We do not need your street address, of course, but if you tell us the biggest major city that you're close to, that helps me and our guests to know what resources we might best talk about with you. I long, my friends, for the day when the resources, it's a level playing field, and I can say to you, oh, well, did you know that this autism resource is available to you? And it really can be available to everyone. Since it's not that way, I hate to taunt you with things that maybe you can't have if you're not close enough to access them. So tell us where you are in the world, even if it's just the state or the country. That helps us to narrow down what might be available to you. And that's really it. And if you do put personal information in your that would identify you in your question or comment, I don't share that with the audience at home. Many times you guys write in and say, how come you don't share the question when somebody asks such and so? And sometimes they put an email or a phone number, or even, I'm so paranoid about it that if you guys write in the name of your child, a lot of times I leave that out. Even if it's just the first name, because I want to protect your anonymity. In any case, and legally we should anyway, right? But it's a personal thing with me as well. And why is it a personal thing with me? Moving on to the next thing, I like to remind everybody that we have a lot of experts that are on the show, but I'm not one of them. So you ask yourself, why are you here? Because it's personal with me. I'm an autism mom, very proud autism mom. And my son was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2.5, and he is now a luscious 13-year-old. And I couldn't be happier with the progress that he has made. And that progress did not happen because I'm just so smart or that I knew all about autism. I didn't. I don't. So don't mistake me for one of the experts. Have I learned a great deal? I certainly hope so. I sure run to try to keep up with what happens. For the longest time, and it's still in a bathroom that we don't use as much, but we have a little thing that sits on the mirror that says the GEMS team is only as strong as the weakest player, and I will not be the weakest player on the team. So I'm constantly running to keep up with that. But I got the help and support that I needed because, first of all, some really good, decent parents said to me, hey, did you know about this? They didn't have to, but they did. And then I chased it down. I did do that work and found CARD. That was who they told me to go to, and that's why I wax poetic about CARD. I am well aware that CARD is not the only ABA provider and not the only quality ABA provider in the world, and please don't ever mistake that I think that. For those of you who are tuning in who don't have CARD services or from another organization, there are many great quality ABA programs, and I hope that all of you who are watching who are or love someone who's on the spectrum get yourself aligned with one of those organizations. For me, though, I speak so highly of CARD because basically they took my life, which was circling the drain, and pulled us out of the toilet and gave us back our lives, all of us. And I'm forever indebted to them for that. And I want to pay forward what I was given and help you to get to that circumstance in your life. So just know that that's where I'm coming from. It is personal with me. In the best possible way, it's personal with me. But in any case, we hope that you will tune in and participate with our experts and not mistake me for an expert. All right, having said all that and bored your pants off, it's time for us to our daily morning workout. It's time for the jargon of the day. This is when we take on one word, one phrase, one acronym, and we try to make sense of what the experts are talking about. This is very important. For the first 2 years that my son was receiving intensive early intervention, I would get so fatoutzed whenever they would start talking jargon, and I would think, really, people, can you not see that this is overwhelmed, underslept, and that I don't have a PhD in psychology, and that I don't even have a master's degree in autism, and I need to know this stuff today. Could you just talk in plain English? Now, after about 2 years, when I got a little bit more sleep, I began to realize I better learn these terms because it's going to save me time. That the reason why anybody uses jargon or terminology is because it saves time and it's more precise. But I fully think that for parents, it can be so overwhelming. So we're trying to demystify it. We give you an actual definition, which I like to make fun of, and then we give you a working definition, which is just the easier thing. And then we try to fill you in on some details about how this applies to your life, how it applies to that goal of getting progress. Okay, so today's term, as you can see there, is three-term contingency. And I don't usually use this term, but more and more I'm hearing people refer to it. And I got into a couple of discussions in the last 2 weeks where this came up, and I went, oh, no, we gotta get this out there. Three-term contingency. So let's take a look at our actual definition for it. Three-term contingency is the process by which a living entity learns that their behavior in the presence of a stimulus can have an effect on the environment. Well, I'm so glad we cleared that up. I don't know about you, but I feel better, right? I know what this is, and I know what all of these words mean, and this still hurts my head. This is why we do jargon. All right, moving on to our working definition. This is the thing that we refer to all the time on the show as the ABCs of behavior. You probably have heard me talk about Skinner before on the show, because Skinner is really the person who made it so crystal clear about how language develops using behavior. And I think that that's a lot of the reason why people who are BCBAs, board certified behavior analysts, and people who are doing ABA consider Skinner to sort of be, the font from which all good things come from. So Skinner talked specifically about this three-term contingency, that every behavior that anyone has three parts to it. There's an antecedent, which is the A of the ABCs, right? There's a behavior, and then there's a consequence. Everything that you and I do that's behavior, everything that living entities do, our dogs do this, our cats do this, our birds do this, like living things that, if we can just look at the behavior, right? But if we want to tear it apart and look completely at the behavior, there's something that happens, there's the behavior, and there's the consequence. The example that I always give, because it's one that we can all relate to, is that every single day, you and I, at some point, walk over and turn on a light switch, right? We all do that at some point. Sometimes we do it in the morning, sometimes we don't do it until late at night, but at some point in the day, we all turn on a light switch. So the behavior is turning the light switch on, right? But what's the antecedent that comes before that? And they're not always the same, right? You can turn on a light switch to tick somebody off because they just made you mad, right? You could do that. You could do that just because you were sitting and reading a book and it became hard to see. So you decided you wanted to turn on the light, so you walked over and did the behavior that way. So all behaviors don't have the same, it can be the same behavior, but it can have lots of different antecedents, and behaviors have lots of consequences, right? Usually when we walk over and turn on a light switch, The room is flooded with light, and it takes care of whatever the issue was, which is why we walked over. But sometimes the light switch doesn't work, right? We still engage in the behavior, but the light switch doesn't work. So the consequence of the behavior can be vastly different depending on what the circumstances are. So it's three different variables that we're looking at always in behavior. And here's the power in this, because if you're somebody who is having trouble with anyone, whether it be somebody who is on the autism spectrum or not, let's say you're a teacher and you have a student who's not on the autism spectrum, but they're engaging in a behavior. We always want to change the behavior. We want to get control of the behavior. In fact, that's the kind of language that we use all the time. We got to get that behavior under control. Can't you control your students? Can't you control your kids? And we think that we're trying to control the behavior. But the truth of the matter is that there is almost no way to actually just control the behavior, right? This is where we get into the stupidity, I want to say. But it's really a form of craziness that we've all been someplace with a child or someone else, and we say, stop doing that. Stop it. Stop it. Stop doing that. I always think of my child in the doctor's office when he was kicking the chair and me saying, stop doing that, stop. And then if they don't want to, what are you going to do, right? So then you have to escalate it and it gets physical. And I remember putting my hand on my son's leg and saying, stop it, right? But what happens if he doesn't want to do that? If there aren't consequences that are meaningful to him in his brain about that, and he really wants to be kicking the chair, he can continue doing that. And as a parent and as a teacher or as a spouse of a person who is engaged in a behavior that we don't like, what are we going to do? Honestly, what are you going to do? So that's not powerful, looking at the behavior and thinking, I'm going to control that behavior. Where the power is in the antecedent and the consequence. We have tons of control over antecedents. And once we start looking at behavior from that perspective of going, okay, that's the behavior, I'm going to let go of any preconceived notions about the behavior, and I'm going to start thinking about what can I change about the antecedent. Ooh, power. There's all kinds of power. And then the consequences. Oh my goodness, we have tons of things that we can do for consequences. And a lot of times we tend to go to, oh, well, let's do something negative, when that's just not as effective. Where it's effective is in the positive consequences. So I'm a former teacher, and I'm thinking about a teacher who's got a student who's engaging in a behavior. Maybe that student wads up pieces of paper and spits them, wads up the paper, sticks it in their mouth, and spits it at other kids during a lesson. This is a behavior that no teacher wants, right? And can the teacher actually, what are you going to do? Take the paper away from the kid so that he can't tear it up? How much control do you have over the behavior? You really don't. But the teacher can start to look at why this behavior is happening. In the beginning of looking at why, you have to look at what happens directly before are they only doing that during math class? Are they only doing it after lunch? What are the things that go into building up to the point where the kid is tearing up paper and sticking it in their mouth? Because we can change all that. Maybe it only happens in math class because maybe the kid is nervous about math problems. And maybe we set up a circumstance where we change the antecedent, and when we do math, we say to them, hey, can you be my secretary and come up and write the math problems on the board for me as I'm saying them? Because this kid likes to write on the board, and what we've done is given them a behavior where the paper isn't there. We changed the moment before completely. And now the behavior can't happen because they're not sitting there with their paper, right? And maybe the consequence for that is that they get lots of praise from the teacher about, hey, you're doing such a great job being my secretary. And it could just be praise, or it could be, I'm going to give you this thing that I know that you like doing because you did such a good job being my secretary. We build that child up to the point where they don't have the need to tear up the paper. So antecedents and consequences are where the power is. And this is why we need to understand what the 3-term contingency is. It's a powerful, powerful tool if we simply adjust our thinking and take, it's not that the behavior isn't important, But controlling behavior happens by looking at the antecedents and the consequences. And we're going to talk more about that and how we figure out what to do. I'm going to give you a toolkit today, later on in this hour. So stick with us for that. But we always like to start in the beginning of the day with a question that we like to give to you guys. And our question today, I think, goes hand in hand with a lot of behavior that we don't want to see. It is how do you deal with frustration? Because we're all going to be frustrated, right? How do you deal with frustration? What do you do when you're frustrated? How do you, because there's many different parts of frustration, right? There's the thing that's happening that's causing you the frustration, and you got to figure out what to do to deal with that. But there's also the emotion of it too. And I will tell you that the person who's taught me more about dealing with frustration is my son. And why is that the case? Because he, the lessons that he went through when he was doing ABA, because he didn't have a skill set or a coping mechanism, and he didn't even have the ability when we started out to learn through observation. And kind of, people say, how can you be grateful about autism? Well, I will tell you, you get far enough down the road and there are some things you get grateful for, because my ability to cope is not always strong. And if all my son had was me to watch, and he'd had the ability to learn through observation, I don't think he would have the coping mechanism that he has now. My husband and I were just talking about this with him the other day, that he is so amazing how he deals with things that are frustrating. He'll say, oh, well, that's frustrating. But no one's ever died from frustration. It's like a thing that he says. And he'll always say, it's not the end of the world. It's upsetting, but it's not the end of the world. And he got that through a series of lessons of having to prioritize when he would be overly upset, overly sensitive about something. And he'd have to prioritize, okay, so is this the same as your dog dying? Is this the same as, grandma dying? Or where is this on the scale? And what can you do about it? And what can't you do about it? And how can you deal with the feelings that you're having? He got all of that from ABA. And if you're wondering, all of those lessons are available in skills as well. That's the curriculum that he was using when he was at CARD. But I'm curious about, there are lots of different techniques that people use. They do breathing, some people write, some people meditate. What do you do when you're frustrated? A lot of people, this is the one that I think a lot of people use effectively and that I'm not using, is they exercise. They get the feelings up and out through doing physical activity. I become the amazing paralyzed woman. But I even see that in my son, that he'll be like, I need to go swimming, or, I need to do some exercise. I got, I just like, I'm feeling restless because I'm frustrated with this. So I need to, so I'm trying to learn from him. But we want to know from you guys, how do you deal with frustration? And we just put up an article on Facebook, but hopefully we can get that question up for you guys as well. Okay, and then we always have a topic of the week, and our weeks are short right now, but our topic for today, very important, and I love how these topics come back to slap me in the face. But what do you do when what you're doing isn't working? There's a whole process for that too, about like at what point, and I was talking with an autism mom 2 nights ago about her frustration about something that isn't working in her ABA program. And it was interesting to me because she was feeling stuck, and I said, you need to tell your team. And she said, but then they're going to say this and that and the other thing. And I said, I really want to empower you to be a part of your child's team. And yes, there are some things that you have to give a college try for, but I want everybody within the sound of my voice to remember that ABA is not okay, here's step 1, and then here's step 2, and then here's step 3, and here's step 4, and this works for all kids. That would be a cookie cutter, right? So even yesterday, we were talking about a study that came out of Chapman University where CARD was involved in this, and they were looking at what is effective. And the more experienced that your supervisor is, and if they have a BCBA standing, they're more effective on your team. Well, why is that? Because they have seen so many kids that they get, I believe, those really experienced BCBAs, that all kids are not going to be the same. And so they have a very creative way of going about how do we get this specific child to learn. And I remember specifically when my son was needing to learn how to count to 100, he was in kindergarten, and everybody had taken a crack at it. Everybody under the sun had taken a crack at it, and all these different ways of teaching him how do you count to 100. He could count to 20, and then it all fell apart. It was maddening, and we just couldn't get him to get the concept of that it's really tens and you're just changing the number before it. He just couldn't get it. And they were drawing in pictures, they were doing all kinds of things, and everybody under the sun had tried a different way. But they just couldn't get him to get it. And in kindergarten, there's a day in which you have to be able to count to 100 or you're behind, right? And we didn't want him to be behind. And so it was the night before, and everybody was working on it. And Peter Farrig, who I just think the sun rises and sets in Peter Farrig. And let me just say, too, we had a lot of experienced people on our team, and even the BCBA on our team had not been able to get my son to learn how to count to 100. And Peter said, you know what, let me try something that we haven't tried. And he sat there, he's like, give me a minute, because he had to create some stimuli because it didn't exist. And he was off-roading it, being creative, using what he knew about my child, what he knew about ABA, and what he knew about the way my child learned to figure out how do we get him to get this. And so he made a stack of cards that were tens, and then he made a stack of cards that were 1 through 9. And so he would, he had my son count 1, 2, and as he was doing it, he put the visual down. And my son was like, I know this, right? And then he put down the 20 card, and he had my son then go 21, and he put down the 1 card next to it through the 2, right? He was being really creative and in the moment to get my child to learn it. And we watched, I wish we'd videotaped it, but we watched my son get it. He got it, and he kind of looked at us and he was like, oh, that's what you, he didn't say this, but it was like, oh, is that what all the fuss is about? And we were all applauding and screaming and jumping up and down. And then he had it forever. Like, we never had to go back and reteach that again. But my point is that it's not a paint by number. There is a level of creativity, and you have to be willing to try things. I needed to let 7 other people have a month of taking a crack at this and trying different things, and not just trying it once, but trying it several times to see if my son could get it. But he wasn't getting it. And so we had gotten to that night before and said, we got to try something new. He's not getting it. And I do think we have to balance always, as parents, patience and willingness to try, right? With being able to identify at some point, hey, is this working? Because if it's not, it might be time to try something else. And I think a lot of times the person who drives that is the case manager, but sometimes it's the parent. Sometimes the parent has to say, you know what, guys, we've been trying this. And it's not an insult to them to say this isn't working. Because remember, good ABA professionals say it's never the student. It's always the method of teaching. Like, it's not the teacher's fault, it's not the student's fault, but are we using the right methods? And there are so many variables in methods of teaching, right? You don't throw the baby out with the bathwater and go, ABA doesn't work. That's not true. ABA works. Like, if I had said, oh, you can't teach him how to count to 100 after a month, ABA doesn't work, oh my gosh, the things I would have lost out on, right? So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it's time to look at it and go, hey, this isn't working. What are we going to do about it? It's scary. It is so scary to say this isn't working. But when you can look at it from a different perspective, good things happen. So we're going to be talking more about that today, and about how our behavior has an antecedent and a consequence, and how we can manipulate those for ourselves so that we can get to the progress, to get to the good stuff, right? Okay, so in any case, we've got a great show for you here today. In this hour, we're going to be talking a little bit about our story of the day, some in the news. We've got our mindfulness tip. And we're going to talk about the ABCs and the 4 usual suspects. I'm going to make that all clear before we're done with this hour. And then in the next hour, so excited about this, you guys. We're only going to have him on audio, unfortunately, because we're still having some technical difficulties. But we are going to have him on via audio. Daniel Wendler, he's been with us before. He is an amazing young man with an autism spectrum diagnosis who is getting his PhD. And he is fascinated by the social connection issue, and he has all kinds of resources for you about how to teach social skills to people who are on the autism spectrum, because he taught himself. So he had a front row seat of what it's like as the student, and he's got a front row seat as the teacher. He's amazing, you guys. He's going to be with us in the second hour, and we're going to tear it down with Daniel. I'm very excited to welcome him back to the show. So that's what's happening, my friends. We're going to take a short break, and then I've gone on way too long, but then we are going to be back with our story of the day. So stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Hi there, I'm Lisa Ackerman. Welcome to the show. So the goal of today, we're going to make meatballs. Let's get started. So again, I'm going to take roughly a pound of my ground organic turkey, and I'm going to add in the secret vegetable. So if your kid doesn't like vegetables, don't cook in front of them, okay? Have them watch a movie or something. But you definitely want to make sure they're not watching, because then they won't eat it. So, and here we go with the egg. And our breadcrumbs. I'm just adding salt and pepper to taste. If you think about kids' shapes and sizes, you want to think small shapes, small hands. So your oven should be preheating at about 400 degrees. We're going to kick into the oven here and look at our meatballs. I did flip them halfway through the 20-odd minute. So we'll put, just like Julia Child's, there's our finished product right there. These are good. Cooking is easy. You don't have to be afraid of it. But we want to hear from you. If you can let us know what recipes are important to you, maybe convert a recipe from a traditional flour or gluten-based to a gluten-free or an allergy-free, we're here to help. So you get to us. You can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. You can reach out on Facebook at facebook.com/autismlive, or reach out at Taka Now. So I know you're having a great day. I had a lot of fun cooking with you in the kitchen, but I'll tell you, before we end, I gotta have more meatballs. Have a great day.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get wild.
Can I just say how much I love Lisa Ackerman? Just love her and miss her. So Lisa, sending you love and miss you. We got to get you back in the studio here. But in any case, right now it's time to talk about somebody else that we love. It's time for the story of the day, and this is really the story of the week. We love Dolly Parton, and there's just more reason today to love Dolly Parton and Dollywood than ever. They announced this week, there was a big story in the Huffington Post, and it's on Autism Speaks as well this week, that Dollywood made a decision, and they're not the first amusement park to do this. In fact, Legoland in Florida had already done this, but they recognize that they have more and more individuals who are coming to visit the park who are on the autism spectrum. And so one of the employees at Dollywood said, I think we need to have a place for kids to go. And what would that look like? They reached out to Autism Speaks and said, would you work with us to create a sensory-friendly room so that if we have a guest who's here at the amusement park who's struggling, because it's a lot, right? And our kids love, a lot of the time, I don't want to say all the time, but a lot of our kids love to go to amusement parks, and they love all that stimuli, but they get full of it, right? I think just like the rest of us, right? But our kids' tipping point and their ability to cope and recover is often hampered. So they need to have something else to focus on where there's not as much happening all at once. And what Dollywood did was create a sensory-friendly room in conjunction with Autism Speaks, so that if a guest comes to Dollywood and they need a sensory break, they can take a time out in that room. It's very specifically designed with things that are sensory friendly that the kids can sit and play with, that are soothing. There's like a teepee in the room so that they can get in and be quiet. It's a lovely thing for a lot of different reasons. It's the beginning of true acceptance, I think, to go, hey, you know, we have guests that need something different. Everybody isn't the same. We don't have to call attention to it and stigmatize it and so on and so forth. I mean, there are amusement parks that have rooms for moms to go in and nurse. To me, this just makes perfect sense. And the fact that Dollywood recognized, and because an employee who has family that are on the spectrum said, hey, we're not quite serving everyone who comes here. I think it's just another step in the right direction. We want to give a big shout to Dolly Parton and to all of her staff, and in particular, the staff member who had the courage to step up, because sometimes that's hard, right? But to step up and say, hey, I think there's something more that we could be doing here. And I really want to thank the media and the Huffington Post and a lot of other media outlets for recognizing it and saying, hey, this is newsworthy, because that's that consequence that we've been talking about, that Dollywood gets a pat on the back and gets some free publicity about the fact that they've done the right thing. I know some people get fatoutsed and go, is that really newsworthy? Shouldn't everybody be doing that? Yeah, but until everybody knows and understands, it's not going to happen. But hopefully more amusement parks will have seen how much free publicity, and it will raise in their mind and go, you know, it seems like that's something that we should be doing as well. And there are more and more autism events that are happening that have these kinds of elements in them as well. A sensory-friendly space where people can go and just mellow out. Disney, I hope that you're watching. Disney does so many things so well, but they do not yet have a specific space for this kind of thing. I will tell you that as an autism parent, I have used other spaces that they have for this, exactly this. But you know, I'm used to going to Disneyland. I go there all the time. For our guests that come in from out of town and go to Disneyland for the first time, they wouldn't know where to find that. Maybe we should do a whole show on that at some point about this is how you do Disneyland. We'll consult Disney and see if they're on board with that. But Dolly and Dollywood, yay, rah-ray, just another reason why you are the friendliest town in the Smokies, and another reason why we all need to get there and be a part of what's happening at Dollywood. And that, my friends, is our story of the day. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back with our mindfulness tip for the day. It's a good one, so stick with us. Mid-swing on this wonderful day, this wonderful walk with Mr. Matt Asner. Talk to us about today's walk. Do we have any facts, figures, numbers, or just pure emotion?
Just pure emotion. I'm about to get the numbers. We'll see what it is.
Okay.
I think it's probably close to 1.6, probably. That's my feeling. But it's incredible. We had 55,000 people plus here today, and you know, I you know, honestly, I've been here 7 years. It gets better and better and better. So.
And really what you've fostered here today is hope. I know that's your favorite four-letter word.
Where are we without hope?
Where are we?
Really, I mean, seriously, where are we without hope? Hope is everything. Hope is eternal.
This is a pretty big event. Every year I love it. What does this event mean to you?
Well, I just think it's great that you see so many people coming out to support, autism.
So we're here with Max Burkholder. In your life, there's a whole community of people that are going to love you no matter what you do, no matter where you go, no matter what you do, and that's the autism community. Are you okay with this? Is this a good thing?
I'm pretty okay with it. This seems to be a pretty happy, supportive community.
Well, what did you learn about autism through portraying this wonderful character?
sort of the individuality of it. You know, like with autism spectrum disorders, a tendency is to sort of generalize everybody with sort of the same degree of affliction as sort of exactly the same, and very, very generalize them a lot. But something I found while just talking to everybody, and that I tried to put into the characters, just the sense of individuality that all of them have, everybody has. And so at a certain point it became not really even portraying autism, it just sort of became portraying the character.
I want to thank you on behalf of everybody for what you do.
That's very sweet.
To bring awareness and to raise money. That's a tremendous, tremendous legacy. But as a dad, you've got other things that you're doing as well.
Yeah.
I want to know, as a family, if you have any advice, what's been something that's been helpful to you personally?
You know, get your autistic kids out in the community. I mean, my son's got a guide dog, so he goes to a lot of cool places. He surfs, he skis, does gymnastics. He's actually trying Hebrew school. I'm not quite sure if he knows what's happening there, but he does all kinds of cool things, and he has a lot of friends. Right now, most of his friends are the adults who take care of him, and over time, hopefully he'll have more friends who are his age, and you'll see him walking around, and people won't be nervous around him. The dog's been very helpful with that. It's like the dog is like the most infectious thing in the world. Like, everybody wants to be near the dog, and he sees that, and he gets some of that affection laid onto him. So as a family, you know, we're just there to support Tyler and make him happy.
Welcome back to Autism Live. Every Thursday, we try to take a minute to talk about a mindfulness moment, because so many of us are dealing with so much stress. I mean, let's just face it, everything, we love this world that we live in and how technical it is and all these gadgets that can help us to do things, but it can also be very overwhelming for anyone. And then when you pile on top of that, having someone in your family or having yourself having unique needs, it can bring the stress level up. I think we have to stop denying that, first of all. I know that sometimes that's hard for our adults who are on the autism spectrum to hear that having a child who's on the spectrum is more stressful, but it is the truth. And I know that you guys wouldn't want me to not tell the truth. It is the truth. It's not because of that individual necessarily. It is because of the way the world deals with things. I think you guys would all agree that it's more stressful for you sometimes because the world doesn't accept you the way you are. And we as parents experience that stress as well. And instead of just denying and saying, well, it shouldn't be more stressful, if we accept that it is more stressful, and then we start to plan, okay, what can we do about it? How can we mitigate that stress? One of the things that we know for sure is that being mindful and mindfulness exercises help people in general, and autism parents specifically, to lower the stress level, to make coping more likely. And then when our kids start to learn through observation, they learn that from us as well, so it can help the whole family. And we know that stress does damage to your internal organs, and we want you to stick around longer, right? So these are all the reasons why we do the mindfulness moment. So today, our tip is making gratitude an action. Oh, what is that about? Because we talk about how important it is to be grateful. And one of the things that is very prevalent in, on the internet, if you do anything about inspiration or having less stress, they talk about gratitude and how it's impossible to be in gratitude and be miserable at the same time. When in the autism world and in the ABA world, we look at this, these are conflicting things. Because you can't, if your child likes to chew on their fingers and you give them something to do with their fingers that they really like to do, like playing a video game, they can't do both at the same time, right? It's a conflicting behavior, and you can use this to your benefit. So gratitude is a conflicting behavior. It's impossible to be in true gratitude and be miserable at the same time. So if we take gratitude and make it an action, and we know that action is the great depression buster. If somebody is feeling blue, taking action is one of the best things that somebody can do to take that away. Same thing with stress. So how do you make gratitude an action? Well, a lot of people have trouble with meditating. So one of the things that they choose to do instead is to list what are the 5 things that they're most grateful for in this moment. And that's how it becomes an action. It really becomes a meditation that you sit someplace quiet. It can be, by the way, in your car. I think that your car is one of the best places in the world to meditate. And I always say, when you get into your car to go someplace, take a second. It doesn't even have to be a minute. I was going to say take a minute, but the truth is, it doesn't have to be. It can be 3 slow breaths in and out to center yourself. You will be a better driver. You will be safer, and your stress load will be lower. Even if especially if you're in a rush, taking that 3 inhales, 3 exhales is great. But with those 3 inhales, I'm saying let's bump it to 5. If 3 breaths is great, let's take it to 5. And instead of just concentrating on the breath, which you can do, something that you can also do is with each inhale, think about something that you're grateful for. And, you can really tell where your mental state is if you go, I don't really have anything to be grateful for, right? And there are moments in everybody's life where you may feel that, but if you stop for a second and think, well, that's not true. It can be as simple as I'm grateful for the use of my legs. Any of you who have ever had any kind of back or leg injury where you could not use your legs, oh my goodness. For those of us who have the use of our legs, even if your legs hurt and you have to limp and use crutches, man, the use of your legs is something to be grateful for, right? And you can take it to that level. You can be grateful for being able to breathe. Talk to somebody who has COPD, man. They would give so much to be able to take the breath that you and I can take. And if you have COPD and you're doing this exercise, then what else do you have that you're grateful for? Maybe it's the use of your hands. Everybody has something that they can be grateful for. And you can be grateful for your life. You can be grateful for friends and family that you have in your life. We don't always have the choice of being grateful for being healthy, but when you do own that, man, that's a powerful, powerful thing. I remember when we were in a pretty place and really struggling with autism, struggling with being able to keep a roof over our heads, me struggling with health issues, man, it was looking nasty and ugly. And I remember a friend and a former student of mine asked for, it was a big birthday that she was having, and she said, I don't want presents, but what I'm asking for is either people to come to lunch with me on this day, or would you come to my church and just come to church with me? That's what I'm asking for my birthday. Well, I didn't have any money to go to lunch, right? That couldn't happen. And this was somebody that I cared about, and it was a big birthday for her. And I thought, well, I certainly can go and sit in her church for a sermon. And it was bring kids with you. And I thought, oh, they're going to kick me out. I got a kid with autism who's going to be screaming. They're going to kick me out. I'm going to go and sit in and it was amazing because what her minister talked about was gratitude for that day. And it was a message that hit me wholeheartedly because I had left my kitchen a mess. And I thought, I don't even want to go home because I've got dishes everywhere and I don't want to do the dishes. And I was really in that space about it. I really don't want to do the dishes. And it was like the minister read my mind because he said, I want you to remember that everything that's kicking your can right now, there's somebody that would be grateful for that. And I thought, I doubt that. And he said, there's a homeless person right now who would love to have the dirty dishes that you have because it would mean that they had a roof over their head and that there was food that had been eaten and that's why the dishes were dirty. And I was like, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Did he just read my mind? Did he just read my mind? And it really brought home for me. It was so powerful for me because it was exactly the example I was thinking about. And I realized, yeah, somebody would be grateful for my dirty dishes. So making gratitude an action is a powerful, powerful thing. And it is amazing how 5 inhales and 5 gratefuls shifts your focus, lowers your stress, and reminds you that you do have stuff in your plus column. Sometimes it just feels like the negative column is 7 miles long. But there is nothing like looking at 5 things to be grateful to go, you know what? It's not all bad. It isn't all bad. I got some amazing things. And I find that the day goes differently after something like that. We all know what it's like. I think about Nancy being back with us yesterday and how hard the last year was for Nancy losing her husband, and how hard it is without him every day now. And I know, because she and I had conversations before we knew that Reed was going to go fast, where it was really hard taking care of him and his health, and it was just really hard. And yet now, today, she would give anything to have that day back, even the hard, hard day when he was here. So no matter what you're going through, I want you to remember that there's something to be grateful for. And somebody in your life might be really sick, but be grateful that you have them with you today. And when you put your head into that focus, I would watch Nancy. There would be days that it was really hard, and she would say to herself, but he's here today. And when she would think that, then she got to experience the blessing of him being there and be in the moment with him, instead of being in the moment of, we're going to plan a funeral, that was the reality. That happened anyway. Be in the moment and appreciate the gratitude that you have. Make gratitude an action. It's great for your stress. It'll keep you here longer. All right, we're going to take a break, and then we're going to be back to really tear down the 4 usual suspects with the ABCs of behavior. Stick with us.
Hey guys, welcome back to Smarty. Today we're going to be making homemade glow-in-the-dark bouncy balls. So let's get started. The materials you'll be needing are 2 mixing bowls, something to stir with, measuring spoons, borax, cornstarch, water, glue, and glow paint and food coloring. So step 1, you're going to take one of your measuring bowls and you're going to measure out half a teaspoon of borax, 4 tablespoons of cornstarch, and 4 tablespoons of water. Then you're going to mix that all together. I'm going to set this aside. In another bowl, I'm going to mix my glue and my glow-in-the-dark paint and any food coloring I want to use to make it a special color. I have 2 separate bowls with the mixtures in them. Now I'm going to put them together, letting them sit for the next 15 seconds, and then I'll stir them together. It's important that you let them sit for a moment before stirring so they can do their magical thing. Now that the 15 seconds is over, I'm going to stir together the mixture, making sure to stir thoroughly until I can no longer do it anymore. You'll see what I mean in a second. Now that I can no longer stir it, I'm going to start rolling around my hands to make a ball. And voila, very own homemade bouncy ball. Woo! Well, I hope you had fun with this activity today. Until next time, drop down, guys.
And you see me flying by your side.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I promised we were going to talk about the ABCs of behavior. We talked about it a little bit before about this is the antecedent, behavior, and consequence. And this is the beginning of the keys of the kingdom. Once we can get that mental shift of realizing, okay, that's what behavior is, it takes some of the emotional sting out of when somebody is doing something that you go, okay, that's just so random. I don't know what that is. I don't know why that's happening. And am I a bad parent? Am I a bad teacher? Why are these things happening? And we have the ability to start to break it down and figure out what to do. Now, we talked about earlier in the show about how powerful we can be if we're looking at changing the antecedents. What happens before the behavior? You know, how are we setting up our students and our kids for success, and what are the consequences that we're doling out? Because we really have a great deal of power in both of those areas, not so much about the behavior, but about the antecedents and the consequences. So how do we figure out what to do? Well, somewhere in there, we need to start looking at what the function of the behavior is, especially if it's a challenging behavior. It's something that keeps happening, right? It's not something that just happened once. It's not a challenging behavior if a child did something once. But if they're doing something again and again and again in the same neighborhood, let's say that there was one parent who wrote to us a couple of years ago about the fact that whenever she would get on the freeway, her child would scream. She would get on the freeway and start driving, and her child in the backseat would start to scream. It was very disconcerting. It made it hard for her to drive. And a professional dealing with autism told her that she should pull the car over and make him get out of the car. And she had written to us and said, I don't think that that's the thing to do. And we agreed wholeheartedly that that was not the thing to do. I don't know what that intervention was based on, but we know that good interventions for behavior are based on knowing what the function of the behavior is. There is no such thing as a random behavior. Every behavior happens for a reason, and if it's happening again and again and again, it's because there is something about the behavior that gives some sort of a paycheck to the person. People who smoke, there is a consequence that is a paycheck, and that is why they continue to do it. Even though they know that it's heinous, disgusting, and smells bad and is bad for them and everybody around them, they continue to do it, and we all go, why? Because there is a paycheck for them in doing this. And different people, different things, okay? And the same is true for our kids who are on the autism spectrum. We look at their behavior sometimes and we go, well, that's entirely random. My friends, it is not. It is not random. All behavior is communication. And when we can figure out what the paycheck is, and that's the function of the behavior, then we get really effective at knowing how to change the antecedent and how to change the consequence. So for instance, if we have a child who's biting, a lot of times we may assume we know what the function of that behavior is, what the paycheck is, but we could be wrong. So let's look at what the four most usual, I call them the usual suspects, the four most likely reasons why someone engages in a behavior. And this is anyone, but we're going to be really particular about why does an individual who's on the autism spectrum engage in behaviors. Here are the four usual suspects. So number one, and it is the most likely culprit, is attention. People do things to get attention, and our kids on the autism spectrum do things to get attention. If you doubt this at all you have to do is pick up an Inquirer magazine, and you will see people doing behaviors that are interesting, right? And we can look at it and very clearly see that they're doing it for attention. If you've ever been in a classroom and seen a kid who acts out, a lot of times, the most often culprit is attention. They're doing it to get attention. I love when myself or another parent says, I don't understand, like nobody wants to talk to me all day long, but I get on the phone with my friend and suddenly everybody wants to talk to me. It's not random. It's not the universe. It's not some crazy, crazy thing, kismet, right? It's because people know when you're on the phone and you want to be talking to someone that if they get insistent and are interrupting you, they're going to get your attention. It happens, right? So, because you want to give them the attention and get it over with so you can go back to the phone call, right? So attention is it's the most likely usual suspect, but there are three others. Another big one is to escape something. People do things to get away from someone or something that they don't want to do or don't want to be around. They don't want to take the bath. They don't want to go to bed. They don't want to eat the thing that you want them to eat. They don't want to go to school. There's all kinds of things that they don't want to go in the grocery store. They don't want to be stuck in the shopping cart. There are things that I want to escape. Talk to me around tax time. I don't want to hear about it. I don't want to know. And I will engage in all kinds of behaviors to not have to do my taxes. I'm an adult and I know that I got to do them eventually, but I will put off, right? Procrastination. We all understand this. And why would our kiddos on the autism spectrum be any different? In fact, the stakes are often higher for them because they often don't have the ability to communicate to you in any other way. I don't want to do that, or I don't want to do that right now. So they will engage in challenging behavior. Okay, then how about they want to gain access to someone or something? So the child who has the tantrum because they want the cookie, and if they make your life difficult enough, they hope that the consequence will be that you will give them the cookie. They want to play with a toy. They want to have access to mom or dad, or they want to have access to the video game, right? So they will engage in a behavior hoping that they will get access to that thing or someone else. A very common tale. And then there's the fourth one that is very prevalent in autism, probably more in autism than anything else, although maybe not. And that is that it's automatically reinforcing, that engaging in the behavior gives a paycheck in and of itself. The paycheck is usually something that's internal, something that you think or feel as a result of doing the behavior. And we all engage in automatically reinforcing behavior. But for instance, the people who click pens, why? This is not serving a functional purpose, right? But there's something about it when you're concentrating on something that can be a stress reliever or help you to concentrate, right? That is an automatically reinforcing. People who rock, whether they're on the spectrum or not. People who kick, swing their legs. There's all kinds of things. People who grind their teeth, it's automatically reinforcing. People who pluck on their hairs, trichotillomania, it's automatically reinforcing. The paycheck is on the inside. This is the hardest to diagnose, and it is the hardest to change the behavior because we don't know what it is that's satisfying on the inside. So it takes more time, but we can change automatically reinforcing behavior if we need to. But it takes the most trial and error. So let's take the example of a boy who likes to bite. Let's say that he's biting somebody at school, and we need to figure out, and it's happening every day. He bites somebody at school, and we need to figure out what the function of the behavior is. The first thing that we do is look at the A's, the B's, and the C's, and that will help inform us what the function is. So we look at the behavior is biting. What's the antecedent? Well, maybe the antecedent is that whenever we go to recess and the balls, there's 4 balls that are handed out on the playground for all the kids to play with, and when the balls get handed out, the child goes over and bites somebody with the ball. Okay, well, so the antecedent is that the child sees the ball, bites the child, and so that's the behavior, the bite. But what's the consequence of it? The consequence of it is that the child drops the ball. They got bit, right? They got bit. They're crying, they're screaming. They go and tell the teacher. The ball falls down. The child goes over, scoops up the ball, and they've got the ball. They got access to the thing that they wanted to. Now, in our minds, we think, yeah, but then the teacher comes over and takes the ball away and yells at them and makes them go sit on the bench. If what the child wanted was the ball, even 1 second of getting the ball means they got access to the thing that they wanted to. So if we're looking at an intervention that for this child that's going to work, and we know that the function of the behavior is that they wanted access to the ball, then what we need to do is change the antecedent and the consequence, and we're always going to give a replacement behavior. If we know that what the child wants is the ball, we need to find a way to give them the ball before the behavior happens and teach them a behavior to appropriately ask for the ball. Eventually, we're going to teach them how to appropriately wait for the ball, but first we got to take care of the behavior, right? And if they ever engage in the behavior of wanting the ball, we have to have a circumstance in place where the consequence is they never get the ball for even a second if they bite somebody, ever. Because that is what is maintaining that behavior. I got the ball for a second. I'm going to keep biting. It's working, right? Very specific intervention we're going to give for that. Okay. What if we go and we see that the child is biting and we look at it and go, well, the biting happens the minute we go to recess and we go out the door, the child goes out the door and they bite somebody. Okay, and it doesn't have anything to do with the ball. That's a different antecedent. The antecedent is still that the playground happens, but is it quite, it's not the balls being handed out. So what's happening there? And we look at the consequence. What does the teacher do when the child bites when recess happens? The teacher goes, you're in trouble and you don't get to be on the playground. You need to go inside and sit in the office and sit with the assistant principal, and you're not getting to go out on the playground. And the child goes and sits with the assistant principal in the nice air conditioning. And if we look at that and we go, oh, does the child not like going outside? Because not all kids like to go to recess. Maybe the child would prefer to be where it's quiet for the air conditioning, right? So then we do some experimentation to see if the child is given the choice of, before we go out on the playground, would you like to go to the principal or would you like to go on the playground? The child chooses to go to the principal. Well, now we know that the consequence, they wanted to escape it. And we can put an intervention into place and see, does the child need to go to recess? Is it the air conditioning? Is it the attention they're getting from the assistant principal? But we can play with that, and but we know that they're trying to escape the playground. We can give them effective ways of saying, I don't want to go on the playground. Instead of, they can hold up a card saying, I don't want to go on the playground. We can give them choices so we don't get to the point of the biting, right? Okay, what if, and I it's good because sometimes there are two functions to a behavior. So the teacher, the child, we have the same thing, the bell rings, we're going to go to recess, and the child bites, and the teacher stands there and gives the lecture to the boy for 5 minutes and says, you can't do that, and sits down with them and holds their hands and says, I don't like it when you bite, and it's attention. So when we see that, I call them especially when I was a teacher, I call this the empty buckets, the kids who just, man, it seems like you can never put enough attention in that bucket for them. But the truth of the matter is that you can put them on an attention schedule. So in that case, if we found that the function of the behavior was the attention from the teacher, that we would all throughout the morning, the teacher would be on a schedule where every 5 minutes, probably they would give that child tons of attention. And then when it came time to go out to recess, the teacher would say, you're going to come with me and we're going to do this together, and we're going to go out to the playground and we're going to find an activity together, and just shower the attention so we don't get that behavior. And eventually we would teach this child how to go longer periods of time. If we did it every 5 minutes and they weren't engaging in the behavior, then eventually we'd go to 6 minutes and see if they can go 6 minutes of not getting attention and not bite anybody. There are people who need a lot of attention, and it's so much better to give them positive attention and rather than wait until they engage in something and we're forced to give them negative attention. Trust me, as a teacher, this was like the thing that I got in spades and realized, it's so much less work to give attention positively. And as a parent, when I can remember that, that's a good thing. Okay, so on to the last thing. Let's say that the child is biting, but they're biting more than just the other kids. They're biting their hands, they're biting their shirt, they're biting their pencil. Whenever there is something close by them, they are biting. And we're looking at that, and it's happening in all kinds of circumstances. It doesn't matter whether it's they're going out on the playground or not for recess. It's just happening across the board. And what we start to realize is that this child has a sensory need. There is something automatically reinforcing for them about biting down. It could be that they're on a medication that's making that happen. We see that a lot. There are some kids who get a methyl B12 shot that it makes them need to bite on something because it's literally awakening those nerves to help them to speak, but it makes it itchy. There are other kids that, if they're teething, there are lots of reasons why kids will bite that's automatically reinforcing. It could be TMJ, all kinds of things. So that's an entirely different thing. And we want to be careful. A lot of times people talk about extinction. Extinction is a procedure that is done in ABA where whatever the reinforcement was that somebody wanted, we stop giving it to them. And it's most often used with attention. It's not only used with attention, but if what somebody wants is attention for the behavior and they engage in the behavior, if we're doing an extinction procedure, we don't give any attention to that at all. And it's a really tough concept for people to understand because they think it means just ignoring. it doesn't necessarily mean that. It means the simplification of it is what did they want? If what they wanted was the cookie, they don't get the cookie, right? If what they wanted was the attention, they don't get the attention. So I wish everybody would stop thinking of it as ignoring and start thinking of it as whatever they wanted. If it's challenging behavior and we put it on extinction, whatever they wanted, we're not going to give it to them. But it's not necessarily anything to do with ignoring or even planned ignoring. And we never, when something is automatically reinforcing, ignoring it is going to be like one of the worst things that we can do because they're just going to do it more, right? And it could get to the point of being unsafe. If somebody's engaging in pica and they've gone past biting and now they're eating things, and we just go, oh, well, we put it on extinction, and as far as I know, extinction means ignoring it, that child's going to end up in the hospital because they're going to eat a battery or something, even more detrimental to their health. So with automatic reinforcing, we need to make sure that we give a replacement behavior that fulfills the same needs. But is socially acceptable. So for instance, with biting, one of the things that we do is that if they really need to bite, and it is something that they're compelled to bite, we look at the medical reasons why that might be happening, but we give them something appropriate to bite, not themselves, not fabric, not other people. They make fabulous fidget toys that are specifically for this, and jewelry, necklaces and jewelry that are just for biting. And then, if it's in a classroom, the teacher knows that that's what it's for, and the child can be biting on their necklace. And we teach the child that as long as what you're biting is your necklace, that there's no consequence for it. You get to bite. But if you're biting somebody else, that there are other consequences, that, you don't get something that you really wanted. So you can begin to see that knowing which one of those 4 usual suspects is important. We had a question that came in last week that I want from our West Virginia mom. I want Dr. Grampiche specifically next Wednesday to answer, because you wrote to us and said, is it possible that there could be 2 functions? And the answer is yes. In fact, sometimes there are 3 functions to something. It can be multi-layered, which is why it's super duper important to look at the functions, and when you've got really challenging behavior, have an expert to help you to do it, but to have a plan that makes sense with the function of the behavior. I do want to give a shout out, and I don't have my little skills topper on the table right now, which is horrible, but Skills has a wonderful a behavior intervention plan builder. Oh, thank you, Matt, for putting that up there. They have a behavior intervention plan builder where you can go in and answer a bunch of questions, and it will you answer the questions, which are very easy to answer, and it will tell you what it appears the function of the behavior is, and then it will help you to come up with, it'll go through antecedent strategies with you, and it'll say, is it possible to do this? And it will go through consequence strategies with you for the behavior. It's kind of a brilliant thing. It's all drop-down menus. I do think that the first time using it, you kind of need somebody to walk you through it, but it's a powerful, powerful tool. I think that every school should be using it, and parents can use it. I have found it to be so helpful for me, because then it doesn't allow you to mess up. Like a lot of times before this behavior builder, at school, they would come up with a behavior intervention plan, and I would go, where's the replacement behavior? And they were like, what? You can't do a behavior intervention plan that's effective without a replacement behavior. It doesn't work. Because if somebody is doing a behavior, there's a reason for it, and we need to give a replacement behavior. That's the same as people saying to you, oh, well, you should just stress less. Or exercise, eat less and exercise more. Yeah, how's that working for you? You need a replacement behavior. That's the only way that anything is effective, and you need to have the right antecedent for the right function and the right consequence strategy for the right function. So even if your school is great about writing a BIP builder, this is a great tool to use to check it. It's a powerful, powerful thing. But when we look at behavior this way, you can change your own behavior. You can help your child to learn new skills using these tools, and you can also get rid of, or at the very least minimize greatly, challenging behavior and have our kids be safer, happier, and get to that progress that we're looking for. That's why we're talking about the ABCs of behavior. We're really running late because I'm so verbal diarrhea today. We're going to take a break, and we're going to go to the A word, and when we come back, we are going to have Daniel Wendler, and he's going to be talking to us about social skills for autism. So stick with us. Here's the A word.
We skipped a few in the middle, didn't we, love? Jack Riley likes to watch videos about the ABCs, or the ABBCs, as he likes to say. He kept throwing a fit and misbehaving when he wasn't getting what he wanted. We finally decided it was time to turn off the computer. And of course we did that without warning him.
He threw one of the biggest tantrums I've ever seen from him, because he's used to getting his way now, because now that he can say it, we're supposed to reward him. But now he's testing us.
While we are 100% ABA advocates and we believe it is working on our son, there is a little fallout in reinforcing these requests that he doesn't quite understand now that he doesn't get everything he wants.
Bye-bye! This is completely typical. When requesting isn't something that happens naturally with your child, you want to create as many opportunities to practice the skill. So you reinforce each time they request, because it will increase the frequency they demand. Once the requests are at a rate you want, then you should begin to fade the frequency of reinforcement and teach new advanced skills, such as having the child wait for a desired item or let them know that they must choose something else. These are all life skills. Not every desire will be met, but you are more likely to get what you want if you communicate your wants appropriately.
You want some applesauce, buddy?
Yeah, why don't we put the car over here,
Yeah,
bud?
let's take the car. We're just gonna take a break. Take a break. Take a break. Do you want this? Do you want the car?
Do you want more car?
Settle down. Settle down.
Okay,
Settle
do you
down.
want more car? Okay, and you want applesauce? Okay. All right, take another bite. One more. There you go.
Nice, that was a good
Okay.
bite too, buddy.
There you go.
Good bite.
All right. Yeah, I should have warned him before I took it away.
We get reminded all the time. It just works so well.
It does, it really does,
Forget to
yeah.
do it.
Okay, 10 more seconds and bye-bye car, okay? Bye-bye car. 10 okay. Okay, let me have it. Bye-bye car. No, that's okay, settle down.
Thank you.
Take two bites, please. Do you want the car?
Yes.
Two bites. Good talking.
One, and then
Good
two.
job. Good job, buddy.
Good job.
Good job. Good job.
How has mealtime been going with you? Still the same? Still
Yeah,
pretty
it's going
good?
well. Yeah, you know what he had last night? Did Cheryl tell you?
No.
We are documenting this because this bite of spaghetti that he's about to take is the first ever meal that Jack Riley has had exactly what Mommy and Daddy are having. With the exception of the cottage cheese. He would eat that too, but we're going slow. I realize it's just spaghetti, and lots of kids probably eat spaghetti, but our kid never did. Not for us, anyway. And now, he's like just a regular kid having dinner with Mom and Dad.
Good boy. Say choo-choo. Choo-choo. Say here we go. Here you go. All right, make it go down. Go down. Whee! Yay! Good job. Should we build more tracks? Okay, sure. Here you go. Do you want the green one or the blue one?
Green.
You want which one?
Black.
You want black? Oh. for you. Cool. I like that. I like it. And he's definitely requesting more eating and drinking, which is really good to hear. So I don't know if they want to introduce him to other things. Like, it's up to them. But just the fact that he's requesting to drink is a big deal for him. Hey, Jack, 1 more minute, okay? Say okay. 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 He has an issue sometimes, like inflexibility a little bit, with just the trains in particular. When I'll ask him to come over to do a program real quick, he'll want to clean up the trains up every single time. With the other toys though, like I can call him over, he can take a break, he's totally fine, and then after we're done with that program, he'll go back and he'll play. With the trains in particular, I don't know why he wants to clean them up every single time. So I'll run some programs and we'll see if he has that issue still. Hey, Jack. Good looking. Come here. That's such good listening. Good job, mister. What is this? What are those? No, what are these? What's this? What's this one? Yay! There you go. Ears. Very good, kiddo. Hey, look at me. Yay! There you go. What are these? Fingers. Good job. What are... Mouth, yeah. What's this? Head. Very good. Okay, one more sticker. What are these? Fingers. Good job. All right. Yeah, that transition was a lot better. Where's Piglet? So we're going to do down dog next. So down dog, there are several different ways that you can do it, and I want to show you first and then help you with yours so that we can work on what feels good for you, okay? All right, because there's no right way to do it. It's more about what your body likes, all right? So for me, what I'm going to do is start off with my hands at the top of my mat, my headlights. My fingers are aiming towards the top of my mat, and then I'm going to tuck my toes, and then my head is also going to drop, and I'm going to look between my toes. Okay. And my body should be, or hopefully, like an A shape. Or V, yes.
Upside down V.
Yep. And so if your quads are tight or your hamstrings are tight, you might need to bend your knees a little bit.
Send it to you.
Or if your shoulders are a little strained or a little tight, remember to push in through your feet, but also sometimes what feels really good is going down on your forearms, like this. You can actually start out this way instead, it's a little easier. So your forearms rest on the floor, you still tuck your toes, and then you're still looking between your toes, but rather than being on your hands then, your weight's along your hands and your forearms. Okay? All right. So, now it's your turn. Okay. So, yep. You're going to do on your hands? Okay, yep. So your fingers are facing the front of the mat. Are you doing forearms? Forearms? Okay, there we go. Wow, you're very bendy. Very nice. And your gaze is right here between your toes. Excellent. Very nice, Jem. Wow. Awesome. Feet are a nice distance apart. How does that feel?
Okay.
Awesome. You want to come down? Excellent. Good. Good.
welcome back to Autism Live. I have with us on the phone right now Daniel Wendler, and I'm so excited, and I've been excited for this a couple of weeks now because Daniel he's been on the show before, but he's an amazing individual. So many of you write into us and talk to us about social skills. And more and more we have adults who are on the spectrum who write in and say, you know, what can I do? I'm at the point where I understand that I'm looking at the world in a different way, and I just want to learn the rules. I just want to know, and then I can pick and choose. But if I know what the rules are, but it seems like it's really hard for our adults on the spectrum to find the places where they can go and to get the services that they need. And Daniel is the answer to all of that. He is currently in graduate school getting his doctorate in clinical psychology. And we're really proud of you, Daniel, because I think the last time you were on the show, you had just made the decision to do that. And you hadn't yet started. And so I was so excited that now 2 years later to check back that you finished your second year in the program. You just have 3 more to go. But you're like halfway. If we squint, you're halfway. So that's really exciting. And I think you're probably the most knowledgeable person to be talking to about this subject. So, and you don't disagree with me, but I was wondering if you would share with our audience why this is a particular interest to you.
Sure. So I'm on the autistic spectrum myself. I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome right before starting high school, which was just a pivotal landmark moment for me because I finally had an explanation for all of the social problems that I had. Up to that point, I just thought that I was awkward or weird or a nerd, or I just thought that there was like something wrong with me. But then when I was diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, then I realized, oh, like it's because I have this syndrome that means that I haven't learned any of these social skills. And so then I decided to start teaching my social skills in a really deliberate manner, kind of how if you dropped me in the middle of Tokyo, I would have to learn Japanese in a really deliberate manner. And so all of my work in teaching other people social skills has come out of the social skills that I've taught myself because I saw the impact that it had on my own life to learn these skills, and I wanted to take what I learned and share it with the world.
And I got to say, Daniel, that first of all, we need to say that your website is improveyoursocialskills.com. And I think this is a benefit to anybody, but in particular our adults and our teenagers that are on the autism spectrum. So important that they have access to this website and take a look at the things that you offer on that website because it's really amazing. And one of the things that gripes me, the older my child gets and the more I see this, there's 2 things that gripe me having to do with social skills. So often a social skills class is being taught by somebody who is not on the spectrum and maybe they have some experience with people who are on the autism spectrum, maybe, but not always. And the class is usually, and that gripes me, because there are things that I don't notice about social skills because I just picked it up along the way. And there are things that even my husband and I will sit now and I'll say, well, didn't you notice that this happened? And he'll say, were we at the same event? I didn't see that. And I would say, yeah, didn't you see when he was talking to her and he was turned away from her? And I just don't think he's as into her as she thinks he's into him. And my husband will go, what on earth are you talking about? He's not picking up on the same thing. And then when I hear you speak, Daniel, you bring up things that I'm like, that never occurred to me. You talked the last time that we were together about realizing that if you looked at which way a person's shoes were pointing, you could tell whether they were interested in the conversation or not. And that had never occurred to me. And I think it doesn't occur to a lot of neurotypical people to look at the things that you look at, that you've learned about social skills. So I think it's particularly fabulous that I think you're a wonderful resource for things that no one who doesn't qualify for a diagnosis could possibly know. So I think you're fabulous that way. And the other thing that really gripes me about social skills is that so often it's just individuals who are on the autism spectrum, that there's no, they don't work on it with people who are neurotypical. And people who are neurotypical, we're bizarre. Don't you think? I mean, I know this. We're bizarre. And we make up rules on the fly. We often don't behave as somebody expects us to behave. We do things that are unexpected. And so I just really appreciate what you're bringing to the conversation, and the more knowledgeable you become and the more degrees and more letters you have after your name, I just really think that you're changing this field, and I'm deeply appreciative of it.
Thank you. That makes me so happy to hear. I really appreciate all the encouragement.
Absolutely. So let's talk about what kinds of things are on your website as resources for individuals.
Sure. So my website has a couple different sections. It has just a variety of topics that it goes into. It talks sort of about body language, where I try to give people a model for body language that makes it kind of easy to interpret on the fly. I sort of talk about, how to make conversation, which obviously doesn't go into every single nuance of conversation, but goes into, how do you sort of keep a back and forth flow going? Because what I find for many people, both autistic people and neurotypicals, is that the greatest challenge of conversation is how do I keep it flowing? How do I keep it from sort of, petering to a halt? And so I have some of my thoughts on that. And then I also have a section on, like, what do you do when a friend of yours is in trouble? How do you be a supportive friend to that person? Which is not the sort of thing that most people think of when they think of social skills, but I think that, number one, it can be so important for your friends to have somebody there that is able to help you. And number two, like, it can be, a lot of my closest friendships have been people who have been able to support me in an hour of need, or vice versa. And so being able to support your friends is really important. Then sort of go on from there to talk about how do you talk in groups, how do you tell stories, how do you sort of build your capacity for empathy, how do you meet people and then make friends with them, and then ultimately, just a couple of tips for how do you date in a way that is, sort of healthy and positive. I also have a full-length book that you can grab on Amazon that just sort of has everything all together in one place. And then I also have a second book called Level Up Your Social Life, which sort of takes some ideas from video games and then shows how those can be applied to social skills. So it's just a lot of different topics that I write about on the site. I also have some books I recommend, and a blog where I just sort of share my thoughts about whatever. So I created it to be really the resource that I never had growing up, and I'm hopeful that other people that encounter it are going to be able to find a lot of richness there.
And you, in fact, people can write to you on your website and ask questions, and you answer questions. And you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you are willing to take on coaching clients to help people. I'm sure you don't have endless amounts of time, but do you have any availability for coaching clients right now?
Yeah, that's a very, I'm glad you mentioned that. I do social skills coaching, have been doing it for most of the years that the site was open. And I do still take on new clients. My availability is a little bit more limited now that I'm in graduate school, but usually that just means that we maybe are going to need to wait a couple weeks to be able to schedule a new client. But I can still definitely take people on. When I started my site, I made a commitment that, everybody that emails me, I'm going to email them back, because I had read that Mr. Rogers did the same thing, and he certainly gets more mail than I do. And so, if somebody watching the show, has a question, has a comment, and they email me, I will write them back. It usually takes me several weeks, because again, graduate school is very time consuming. But I do try to make myself available to people, whether through email or through coaching.
Well, and you mentioned that you got the 2 books. Can we get both of them on Amazon?
Yeah, they're both available on Amazon. They're also actually available on Audible. So if you prefer to listen to an audiobook driving around, I got a guy who's a great narrator to
Wonderful, wonderful. I want to take a short break, Daniel, and then I want to come back and talk specifically about the dating piece. Because I would say that we get more email about that from our adults that are on the spectrum than any other thing. Dating is hard for anybody, but it's changed so much that one of the things that I find is that the parents of teenagers and adults who are on the autism spectrum, we are at a loss for how to even help our kids because we don't understand what the rules are in this digital age. You know, I never had to break up with a boyfriend on Facebook, or to deal with the relationship afterwards. So I would love it if we could talk about some of the things and ways that we can help support our teens and young adults on the spectrum so that they can have a tool bag to deal with modern dating. So we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to be back more with Daniel Wendler. But in the meantime, I want to encourage all of you to go to improveyoursocialskills.com, improveyoursocialskills.com, and check out some of the resources that Daniel has available for you on his site. We'll be right back after these messages.
Our twins, Justin and Jessica, were premature babies, so we always were very conscientious of their development. But I think it was probably 15 months, Justin started getting really obsessive compulsive with opening and closing doors. And Justin started tantruming a lot too. These would be major tantrums that were just completely debilitating to the family.
Having to take them out of the house, put them in the car, drive around, just to calm them down.
Yeah, I remember a breaking point and just thinking, you know what, we got to do something. This is not right. Once we were on the track to getting a diagnosis for autism, we started sharing that with our close friends and family. It just so happens that somebody from our older daughter's private school called us out of the blue. She introduced herself and she says, "I know that recovery is possible." Those words so early in our journey were a guiding force for us. As we got more educated in knowing what is effective therapies for kids with autism, we realized quality ABA is vital to that progress. That's where we decided that CARD was the right provider for us and for our son. Justin responded very well to therapy. The behaviors were tracked, and we saw that what was being instituted was working.
Justin, what are you doing?
I'm coloring.
You are coloring. Good for you.
There was real progress, and it was progress that was tangible.
I just remember when he made a sentence. He said a sentence. We were just happy about it, going, "No way, I can't believe you just did that."
What's the date?
The 18th
18th of what month?
December
Oh, what year is it?
2007.
Oh, okay. So how old are you today then?
5.
The therapies that CARD did for Justin didn't just impact his daily living skills, but it was a positive impact on our entire family.
I'm Justin. I am in 4th grade. I like playing video games sometimes. My dream to build a teleporter machine. It's like sometimes if like we're on an airplane and it's like really long, you guys just say, "Oh, hurry up with that teleporter machine. We're waiting on you." And I just started Friday Night Lights. This is our 3rd game of the season, and it's pretty fun. You have to be fast.
We attribute so much of Justin's recovery to CARD. Their goal was the same as our goal. We wanted Justin recovered. June 12, 2008 is a day that I celebrate every year because that is the day that Justin was deemed recovered from autism. And Dr. Doreen Grandpichet met with us, looked at him, and just said, "He's brilliant. You need to keep his mind stimulated because he's very smart, and he has no residual traits of autism.
Welcome back to Autism Live. We have with us on the phone right now Daniel Wendler, and he is in the process of getting his P is a clinical psychology PhD. So that's a PSYD. I don't know, what do you call that, a PhD? What do you call that?
It's a PsyD. It's a doctorate, but it has more of a clinical focus rather than a research focus, which is why it's different than the PhD.
Got it. But amazing young man who has just been a trailblazer in terms of social skills. He was sharing with us in the last segment that he got a diagnosis of autism spectrum disorder. I think, well, back then, the diagnosis that you would have gotten was Asperger's, correct?
Yes.
And how old were you when you got that diagnosis?
I think it was 12 or 13.
12 or 13. And you really set out to learn what you needed to know in terms of social skills, and in the process of doing that, really created footprints in the snow for so many others. We want to remind everybody, go to improveyoursocialskills.com to see a wide array of resources that Daniel has available for you. He has 2 books that are out that you can find on Amazon. And in a minute, I do want to talk about the newer book, Level Up Your Social Life, The Gamer's Guide to Social Success. We were just speaking during the break about the fact that Daniel is a wonderful speaker, and you can check out his TED Talk if you go online to find that. But Daniel is available if you have an event coming up to have him come and speak, and you were saying that you've got 2 events that are coming up that are of particular interest to us. One of them is the Matthew Reardon Conference, and where and when is that?
So that's going to be February of next year in Savannah, Georgia. It's a two-day event, so they bring in a lot of different speakers, some folks that are like on the spectrum that are kind of self-advocates, some folks that are just like subject matter experts. Last year their keynote speaker was Temple Grandin, so they have just a lot of resources that are available for people. I was a part of it this year, and I'm really excited to be a part of it next year as well.
Fabulous. And then a little bit later on this year in October, you're going to be here it's in San Diego, isn't it? The Love and Autism Conference? Yes. We've had them before on the show. Love that conference. And hang on one second here. Oh, I think I just hung up on Daniel. I did. I hung up on the wrong person. All right, give us a second. We're going to go to break. I'm going to get Daniel back on the phone because I don't know how to work a cell phone. My apologies to Daniel and everybody else. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come right back with Daniel. Stick with us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. 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 Let's get wild.
Hi, welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Lisa Ackerman. We're here doing allergy-free cooking, and I brought my sister with me today.
Jamie Davis, thanks for having me.
A lot of people are asking about a allergy-free breakfast, and breakfast can be full of crap.
But it's full of
cereal.
crap, and it's hard to do. We don't have time in the morning. We're in a hurry.
We're going completely nut-free. The recipe is not
personality. We can't do anything about.
do anything about that. So we're going to start off first with. I'm using sorghum and brown rice flour. I find the texture good, and I've added some flaxseed meal. We talked about that last time, flaxseed meal for poop. Almost every one of our kids has a poop issue. What's next on the recipe is the quinoa flakes, baking powder, cinnamon, and the xanthan gum. It brings the glutinous texture back into the flour, and often what happens with these recipes is they can fall apart. This one holds up nicely. I like it. For the folks that are egg-free, we have a ton of egg replacers. One of those can be the arrowroot starch or bringing back some additional flaxseed. So there's a lot of options to go eggless, but we're going to go egg full in this one. For sweetener, I use the maple syrup. I stay away from refined sugar. What I'm adding now is the coconut milk, maple syrup, and a little bit of the coconut oil. And we're going to add in the raisins, craisins, and chocolate chips at the end. I find that chocolate chips can coax people to eat some really amazing things. when we started, Jeff had 42 food allergies, so we had to get creative in how we cooked. So nuts were a big, big issue. What I like now is that he can tolerate so many more things after start doing this diet. So let me show you how you can deal with this sticky stuff here. You get your fingers really wet, and you can push it down. So my oven has been preheated. It's at 350 degrees. So we're gonna just throw this in. Like I said, I like it around 23 minutes, and the magic oven says, I'm done. Looks like, don't you love magic ovens? They're awesome. There we go, pops right out. The texture of these, and it's so pretty. It looks almost like a big chocolate chip cookie, but you actually made it healthy. You can be my guinea pig. Tell me what you think.
That looks really good.
Doesn't it? So the textures and the colors in there are just beautiful. So the raisins are for you, the chocolate chips are for your kid.
I can't believe it's gluten-free.
I know, right? It doesn't taste like, you know, crap. We're wrapping up another cooking show. If you have feedback, you can email us at autismlive@gmail.com. We're, of course, on Facebook. You could go to facebook.com/autismlive. And of course, Talkin' Now has thousands of recipes. Join me there, and we can cook some more later on. So thanks for joining us.
You say howdy, we say hi. Let's get rowdy, let's get wild. Let's get.
Welcome back. We have Daniel Wendler back on the phone after I so unceremoniously hung up on him, and he was such a good sport. But we did get to see a great recipe, and Daniel and I were just saying how good that looked. But before I hung up on Daniel by accident, not on purpose, he was talking about that he's speaking next February at the Matthew Reardon Conference, and he's speaking this October at the Love and Autism Conference in California, something that we can all look forward to. And he is available as a speaker, and he's a brilliant speaker, and something that's so, so very topical. I want to encourage, if you've got an event coming up and you need a speaker, Daniel's a great speaker. And should they go to improveyoursocialskills.com or go to danielwendler.com for that?
Either is fine. The contact form on both websites just goes straight to me. So, pick your favorite, and then you can contact me that way.
Okay, great. So, Daniel, I want to talk about dating because it's changed so much. The rules are different, and I see a bunch of teenagers and young adults on the autism spectrum who have parents who dated before the digital age, and we're all a little bit lost and wanting to help our kiddos. And we've got so many people writing into the show saying, where's the rule book about dating? What advice do you have that you can give to our viewers?
Sure. So I think there's a couple things that are coming to mind. One is really to realize that dating is just an extension of friendship. Like the skills that will make you a good friend, such as being able to spend time with another person, being able to show, care for your friend, being able to have fun together, being able to show interest in the things that the other person has interest in. Those are all of the same skills that will make you successful in dating. Like dating, there's some flirtiness involved, and maybe you feel some butterflies in your stomach, but fundamentally, it's just another relationship. Like it's just closer than a normal friendship. And so what I find sometimes in people that email me or coaching clients is that they want to jump right into dating, but they may have never really had a close friend, or they may never have had a close friend of the opposite sex, or of the gender that they want to date. And so I always say, focus on your friendship skills. Like, focus on, can you deepen your friendships? Can you learn how to be a good friend to other people? And those are the skills that naturally are going to make you much more successful in dating, rather than separating things into dating skills and everything else, which I think is a false dichotomy.
I love that, Daniel. I think that's spectacular advice, first of all. But go ahead. What were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. I guess I also sort of wanted to speak to kind of this perception among parents that can be like, everything feels so different. Like, what does it mean? Like people are breaking up over text now. My child got a mean Snapchat. What even is that? And it can make parents feel bewildering. But I would again sort of say that things are not as different as they appear. Like, yeah, like the medium for the communication is different, but all of the emotions are the same as they were in, in every generation. Like, the emotions of wanting somebody to care about you and being hurt when that person turns you down and being anxious about, does this person like me or not? So one thing that I think parents can do really well is they can really empathize with their child's, whether it's a teenager or adult or whatever, they can empathize with their child's emotions and really be like, yeah, like, you must be, that must feel really bad to have that person, turn you down, or it must feel scary to have sent that text and then not got a message. And not only does that make the child feel heard, but it also gives them language to, like, to understand their own experience. So if you say, yeah, it sounds like you felt, really anxious when you talked to that girl for the first time, because you were worried if she would like you, that, maybe the child has not consciously thought through that. Maybe they just felt the anxiety and then they were responding to it with their behavior, and they never really stopped to think it through. But then when the parent can sort of give them language for understanding their emotional experience and really affirm that, yeah, those are normal emotions, that helps the child have more control. Again, whether it's I use child, but this is true whatever age of the person that you're working with.
And Daniel, these are such great tips and great ways of looking at things. It just reminds me of why we get so excited when we have a chance to talk to you, and why I really want to encourage people, go to Daniel's website, Daniel Wendler, Wendler, or improveyoursocialskills.com, because you just make it like so accessible for all of us. I think a lot of times we make it way, way, way too complicated. So this is why I'm so excited that you're in the world and doing what you're doing. Let's talk a little bit about your new book. I have not had the opportunity to look at it yet, but I am so intrigued by this idea of leveling up your social game. So is this a rule manual for, and just uses the metaphor of gaming, or does it go into some of, because that's a huge way that people interact now. Somebody was just saying this the other day on the show about how it used to be, even for the guys, that the guys would get together and they'd be like, what are we going to do tonight? And they would go hang out and do whatever. And now more and more it's guys saying, okay, so I'll meet you in this game room and we'll play on this team against that team. It's a different, and I'm just wondering, does the book cover that, or are you just using it as a metaphor?
So I'm just using it as a metaphor. I don't have any advice about how to interact with people in game worlds specifically, but I think that most, again, just like how, dating, same skill that you find in friendship, I think that virtual interactions can benefit from a lot of the same skills as other interactions as well. So I think it all is, improvement in one area is going to help you in all of the areas.
Absolutely, absolutely. I really want to encourage people, so we can get the books on Amazon, but I think we can also get them on the website. I feel like I was able to go to a link to be able to get it from your website, and encourage people, if they have questions, to write and ask you. I guess so many people write and say, I don't know how to do this on my own, and it always makes me think, but you figured it out. Do you think that you just had mad skills in this area, and that you wanted to learn? Why do you think you were able to figure it out on your own?
Yeah, I think, just sort of, briefly, I think that there was a couple of different things that were really helpful for me. One is that I think that sort of all throughout my childhood, I had one good friend, and I think that one friend really helped me, like, learn what it, why I should want to be social, and learn some of the value of having a friendship. And so I would say, if parents are watching this, they've got a kiddo, don't worry so much about making the kid the most popular person at school. See if you can get that kid one friend, and that can really help them build resilience for wanting to be social down the road. But beyond that, like, I had my friend, I had good support from my family, but I think I also was willing to if anybody, whether neurotypical or on the spectrum, if anybody says, you know what, I'm going to study social skills like a foreign language, I'm going to treat it like my job, I'm going to spend some time every day studying and practicing, they're going to get better. And I think that the biggest thing that differentiated me from a lot of other people is that I was willing to commit to that and I was willing to stick with it. And I think that that's something that other people can do too. I think that you just have to be willing to say, where are the resources and how do I really use them and really work on this?
I'm so impressed with you, Daniel. So impressed. Now that you're 2+ years in to your studies, what's the end game plan for you? Where do you picture yourself in, say, 10 years?
Yeah. So my goal, I always want to continue doing clinical work just because I think that there's some amazing things that happen in therapy. And, just to put in a little plug, I would recommend for anybody watching the show, on the autistic spectrum, for them to consider therapy because that can really help you not just learn social skills, but also get in touch with your emotions, which are going to help with your relationships. But I want to be doing clinical work, but I also want to take everything that I've learned about psychology and combine it with everything that I've learned about social skills and use that together to really help people, on the spectrum and off the spectrum, like build relationships, build their social skills, be able to connect better with other people. So my goal is to write more books. My goal is to, do more speaking. My goal is to, take the ideas, put them in a way that can help as many people as possible and get them out there. And so that's sort of the goal. It's what I'm doing right now, and hopefully it's what I'll be able to do even more once I finish my studies.
And when you say therapy, what kind of therapy are you talking about that you say you encourage everybody to get therapy? What kind of therapy are you talking about? Talk therapy okay.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, psychotherapy with somebody with a mental health degree.
Okay. And I guess because you are so successful and clearly you're so articulate, Daniel, and you've been able to do some amazing things in your life. People are already starting to write in and say, what kinds of things did your family do to help you to get as far as you have? What happened for you after diagnosis that besides you deciding that you were going to study social skills like a foreign language, did you get any kinds of therapy as a teenager?
So I did go to therapy at the clinic that diagnosed me, and there was like a group social skills training thing that was there. I honestly feel like the therapy that I received that was more helpful was a little bit later in life, because I think that I had a little bit more perspective to reflect on my experience better. But I certainly, I also maybe don't recognize all of the value of what I got when I was a kid. I guess I also did get therapy as a child to help with some of the depression that I had as a result of the bullying. So I've had therapy along the way. It has been helpful. But to answer your question about what my parents did, I think one is that they set up very patient structures for teaching me social skills. So the example I always like to give is we would watch movies at our home, and I would have the remote so I could pause the movie. And anytime that there was something that would happen that I didn't understand socially, I would pause the movie. I would ask my parents, and in a friendly way, they would answer and explain, this is what happened. And then that sort of like in the moment teaching really helped me understand better. I'm sure it wasn't the most fun way to watch the movie for them, but they were really able to be patient and allow that for me. I think the one other thing that I would say as far as what can parents do is that counterintuitively, one of the most important things that you can do for your child's social skills really has nothing to do with social skills, and it's just being a secure and loving parent to them. A lot of the research that I'm looking into in graduate school sort of looks at what are the effects of a stable, like loving parenting relationship, what in psychology we call secure attachment. What are the effects of that for autistic people later in life? And it turns out that if an autistic person is able to form a secure attachment with their parents, if they're able to have a close and loving relationship, that makes it much easier for them to form relationships with people down the road. So you're a parent that's watching, yeah, get your kids in social skills training, work with them on their social skills, but also like take the time to just be a parent to them. Take the time to like go out to pizza with them. Plan something every week that's special for the two of you, where your child can feel like you love them. You've got their back. You accept them 100% no matter what. And when the child can sort of internalize that and they know, my parents love me no matter what, that's going to make it much easier for them down the road to meet other people and believe that those other people could love them too. And that's really something that only the parents can do.
That's amazing advice. I wish we had more time because that's fabulous advice, but we're out of time and I need to go tell my child that I love him no matter what. But Daniel, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. Again, we want everybody to visit improveyoursocialskills.com. Get Daniel's books. If you want an amazing speaker at your next event, have Daniel come and be your speaker because he is the best. Daniel, we just adore you, and we're going to check in on you from time to time. I just so proud of you, what you're doing, and so appreciative of all the help that you're giving so many people. But we're gonna say goodbye for now, and hopefully I'm gonna see you at the Love and Autism Conference.
Okay,
I'm going to try to get there for that. All right. Thank you so much, Daniel. And again, improveyoursocialskills.com. Bye-bye, Daniel. I have no idea how to hang up the phone. But we are well past out of time. And so I'm just going to say goodbye. I want to remind, programming note to everybody, that next Wednesday, I will not be here. Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh will be here. Nancy Alspaugh-Jackson will be here, and I will hopefully, let's keep fingers crossed, Skype in from the Autism Society of America conference in New Orleans, where I will be with a whole bunch of really wonderful people. So we will have a full show on Wednesday with Ask Dr. Doreen and Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, where like I said, hopefully I'll be Skyping in, but we will not have a show on Thursday. I figured out how to hang up. Poor Daniel hanging out. We will not have a show on Thursday, but I will be back the following Wednesday and with much to report about everything that happens at, I have no idea what's happening. We'll hear all about what happened at the Autism Society of America conference. If you're there in New Orleans, come on by I am at the card booth. I'm not there on behalf of Autism Live, although I'm going to find some time to do some Autism Live. But I'm there on behalf of the card booth. I will be there, and my fabulous son will be there too. Until I'm back, I want to wish all of you wonderful summer. I'm giving you air hugs. Give your kiddos a hug from me, and again, one for you too. Bye-bye for now.